Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the Aliens and Angels Live podcast. So, today we will continue on with readings from my book, and we're going to cover part 2, chapter 8, ET, Love and Reproduction. Since the beginning of 2025, I started off the new year with chapters 1 through 7 of my new book called Transdimensional Meet the New Neighbors. Please do go back and watch the replays to catch up. Today we will continue to read and discuss part 2, chapter 8, ET, Love and Reproduction. And for those of you who have already purchased your copy, feel free to follow along, add your comments, and ask me questions arising from the content. If you do not yet own your own copy, the links for both Kindle and paperback versions are featured below in the description. All of my links are featured below. Thanks for liking, commenting, subscribing, and please do share my content with your friends. And I'm happy to announce that on YouTube, well, actually, I think even on Rumble, channel memberships are now available. So you can help to support my channels and also take advantage of my perks. So yeah, today is a very exciting chapter. I'm not going to share everything in it because some of it you can look forward to when you purchase the book for yourself. I have a couple of announcements. So this is the first book that I published that we're going to cover the information from today, Transdimensional Meet the New Neighbors, which is available on all Amazon websites worldwide. But I also have a second book published called Transdimensional 2, Meet the Greys Picture Book. And in it, I have firsthand accounts from experiencers, and I get their take on the Greys. I have the first chapter is by myself. The second chapter includes authors such as Dolly Safran, Nancy Thames, Preston Dennett, Ronald Kinsella, Philip Kinsella, Jimmy Blanchett. Let's see if I left anybody out here. Oh, Elsa Dillon. And then the majority of the book contains beautiful images that were AI created. I created them with AI, and we cover all kinds of different races of the Greys. So there's adult males, adult females, children of the Greys, Greys that look quite human-like, and also hybrid, all the hybrid children. And so there's over 250 full-page images that are available. Now, these are not snapshots of the Greys. They don't look exactly like the Greys. So the Greys, as you may know, is a diverse population of beings, interdimensional and intergalactic beings. And what they all have in common is that their skin does not contain the pigment that reflects light in the color spectrum that we can detect with our eyes. So to us, they all look like they're gray, but they actually come in many different races and different places, dimensions, you name it. So the purpose of my second book is to help reduce the fear. So, it's only a short matter of time, if not happening already, that the Greys are really making their presence known, regardless of what race they belong to. And at first, humans are going to be a bit freaked out when they see them. And I figured that if I produce this book, it will get you used to what non-human humanoids look like so that you can be prepared, so that when it does come out on the news and social media and such, you won't be as scared, you won't be frightened, you will be able to stay grounded, and you will be able to keep your critical thinking skills, because you'll already have been exposed to images that look very similar to them. And that was the purpose of producing the second book. So you may want to take a look at that, also available on Amazon worldwide. But getting back to Transdimensional Meet the New Neighbors, we're going to read from chapter 8. One other thing, I do have another announcement. I'm going to be away. I am going to go and stay with my grandchildren and my grown daughter and son-in-law for a couple of weeks, or actually spanning a few weeks. And so what I've done is uploaded to YouTube and also the audio platforms, all the episodes that are coming up for the Aliens and Angels podcast, but also for the Quantum Guide Show, so that you won't miss out on any content. And I've got them ready to go as previews, so that you, even though I probably won't be present for the previews, you'll be able to talk amongst yourselves and communicate and take advantage of the live chat. So I just want you to know there will be no interruption in programming. The content is going to cover all kinds of stuff, especially interviews that I have done with Brian Rue, with the Forbidden Knowledge Network, with Nina the Mystic, and other people. So please do continue to tune in and enjoy the content. Please leave me some comments, and just take advantage of my content, which will not be interrupted. And then I'll be returning on the first Wednesday in April with Joan Wyden, who is a psychic healer. And then on the Sunday after that, for the next Aliens and Angels podcast, which will again be live, I will probably finish off the book and open things up to Q&A. So that's what, just a little taste of what is coming. So we've covered a lot in this book. I'll just read the chapter headings to you. So part 1 is clarification, which is basically my take on the whole thing, why we haven't heard more about ET contact in the past, and my paranormal history and my background, which started when I was very, very young, and the things that I believe contributed to my paranormal experiences. And also I give you my take on the paranormal realms. And there's a lot of them, and they all overlap, but I've put it into some kind of an order so that you can make more sense of how I see things on a spiritual level. Then part 2 is my contact experience. Chapter 3 is an intergalactic resettlement program. Chapter 4 is what is ET like? Chapter 5 is welcome to the big ship. Chapter 6 is orientation. That was my orientation to transdimensional living. Chapter 7 is life on the big ship, a typical day of what I participated in, what some of the festivals were like on and off world. And then, of course, now is chapter 8, love, reproduction, and sex. So if you have your books, please feel free to follow along, and I encourage you all to join in the live chat while I am reading and participate in the program. Chapter 8, Love, Sex, and Reproduction. Intimacy aboard the big ship. The atmosphere on the big ship is quite sex positive, but this changes when we are down on the planets doing the pre-settlement research work. We are so busy with our work on planet that we choose not to exercise this action. But back on the big ship, the culture is generally very sex positive. Aboard the big ship, sex and reproduction are not necessarily connected. ET expresses unconditional love toward every living being, but may choose to only have sex with a select few, and then when they are ready, they will reproduce offspring with a single other. When understanding off-world culture, you must divide the human concept of intimacy up into categories: love, sex, and reproduction. Sex for reproduction requires some preparation time and is more technical than sex for body pleasure and orgasm. Sexual activity helps beings to form stronger emotional bonds with each other, has a healthful effect on the body, and provides the pleasurable rush of energy, hormones, and chemicals to refresh the body, mind, and spirit. However, later in life, most elder beings evolve past the need for sexual contact and transmute this desire and energy into spiritual, paranormal gifts. But for those with ages of under about 200 of our years, sex for physical pleasure and orgasm is considered part of healthy living, like eating and sleeping. While there, I noticed that there are different ways to produce orgasm, physical and psychic. Physical sex is way easier to participate in because it does not require us to figure out sorry, I read that wrong. Go back. Psychic sex is way easier to participate in because it does not require us to figure out biological, cultural differences and preferences. Psychic sex is more intense than physical orgasm alone because it involves an energetic body, mind, soul connection. State of bliss. The beings aboard the big ship often exist in a low intensity state of bliss, which includes feelings of general happiness and spiritual joy. Achieving and maintaining this state of bliss is easy when beings experience a superior level of health for their bodies, mental happiness, and contentment, along with a joyful spirit. Even on Earth, this three-component state of bliss creates a magical condition, and it has been scientifically proven to affect the strength of our heart's toroidal energy field and the wellness state of many other bodily systems, both physical and energetic. The same is true for ET, since they are very much like us and exist at our next stage of development. As stated by the Heart Math Institute, quote, the answers to many of our original questions now provide a scientific basis to explain how and why the heart affects mental clarity, creativity, emotional balance, and personal effectiveness. Our research and that of others indicate that the heart is far more than a simple pump. The heart is, in fact, a highly complex, self-organized information processing center with its own functional brain that communicates with and influences the cranial brain via the nervous system, hormonal system, and other pathways. These influences profoundly affect brain function and most of the body's major organs and ultimately determine the quality of life, unquote. This is well recognized among our ET relatives and is why um, their cultures are love-based. So now I want to talk a little bit about love. A lot of people on Earth have no idea what love is really all about. They think it's some kind of an emotional infatuation that leads to sex, but they don't realize it's so much more than that. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that now from my book, page 122. Love, closely aligned with a state of bliss, is love, and in ET culture, everyone loves everybody, whether they have sexual exchanges or not. Every being accepts every other as they are and honors their respective life journeys. Everyone is given the chance to learn, change, and evolve, and there is no judgment while they focus on creating a truly loving environment. When beings achieve the ability to love unconditionally, their worlds soften and others become more loving and accepting as a result. With the dominant theme of love, everyone can relax and trust that everything will be all right. Aboard the big ship, there is no value or purpose in holding bad feelings, resentments, or the need to construct past wrongs from memory. All beings aboard the big ship prioritize self love and take good care of their bodies, minds, and spirit. It is well recognized that true love stems from self love, and until we master the skill, we do not truly know what it means to love others. Up until this point, most humans merely exercise illusionary love, but ET knows how to put themselves into the very center of their circle of care. You might be wondering how love is culturally constructed and what are its elements. To answer this question, there are several universal components of love to look at. Let's start by considering the concept of kindness. ET beings ET beings strive to be on good terms with everyone, and exercising kindness comes naturally to them because they are well aware that acts of kindness make everyone feel of value and are good ways to pay forward blessings. These beings have long recognized that good things happen for those who exercise kindness, which is drawn back into their life experiences. Since they encourage no lack for anything, there's no competition for resources, and the telepathic nature of communication enhances feelings of connection and validation. Next, let's consider the element of goodness. Just want to say hi to Maya. Hi, Maya. Nice to have you with us today. In case you have your book handy, we're now reading from page 123 from Transdimensional Meet the New Neighbors. Goodness is seen as excellence of moral quality. And since my ET friends communicate telepathically and are very energy sensitive, everyone thrives in this atmosphere of safety. Nothing is hidden, and there is no desire or need for hidden agendas or behaviors. Goodness stimulates honesty, fairness, personal responsibility, and personal excellence. By practicing goodness, all beings enjoy peace and contentment, and ET understands that this increases their value as physical and spiritual beings. A common nonverbal greeting on board the big ship could be translated as, "Be good to yourself as you are to others." This brings us to the concept of peace. ETs are spiritual beings who are at peace with themselves and others. Telepathic communication eliminates misunderstandings and conflict. So everyone lives their own truth fully. Sorry, I'm going to reread that. Telepathic communication eliminates misunderstandings and conflict. So everyone lives their own truth fully and honestly and communicates their truth without fear of reprisal. And they know fully that every being has a unique perspective and deserves respect for what they know. Finding mutually agreeable solutions lifts relationships to a higher level, and this action is very rewarding and satisfying. These beings exercise compassion for themselves, and compassion for others comes naturally to them, and so it is easy for them to reflect a state of mildness. Mildness is closely aligned with patience and usually takes practice for humans to achieve. But this seems to also come naturally to off-world beings, and I saw no evidence of the stages of discontent which could lead up to conflict. Without exception, I found ET to be mild and inoffensive, which fostered my trust, and I believe this allows for a state of being where everyone can think clearly and rationally. They have no concept for rudeness or aggressiveness, so everyone exercises free choice as to whether or not they want to participate in any particular telepathic communication or situation. This allows for mercy and compassion towards others who unintentionally may act in ways which are foreign to the established culture of the beings on the big ship. ET is also very patient. Like mildness, patience is a given on the big ship, and this creates an atmosphere which allows room for everyone to really understand each other and gives them the time to assess all the non-telepathic cues which add to their message. Patience is the hallmark of the emotionally mature status of the ET beings and makes their habit of abundant compassion possible and fosters their habit of exercising faith. The assured expectation of things not yet revealed is common since these beings do not face internal or external threats as they openly contribute to the culture of the other beings aboard the big ship. While freely expressing themselves, they easily see the good intentions in others and the positive aspects within challenges. Faith allows them to show forgiveness, optimism, and perseverance, and this leads to opportunities to exercise self control. Aboard the big ship, self control is automatic and differs from patience in that it gives beings their own choice to self govern their thoughts, communications, and deeds. ET has mastery over self control, which is necessary to exercise all of the other components of love, like joy, peace, kindness, goodness, mildness, patience, and faith. In off world culture, self control is closely aligned with self soothing, which is an important way to show mercy to themselves. Soon, humans will learn that all of these practices must be directed towards self before they can be shone outwards to others. Off world beings are very aware that we are all connected, and this is why they operate within the love harmonic, which is manifest in all aspects of life, including intimacy. So, as you can see, we often think of these different components of love as being separate things, but they're not. That is what love is. Love is being patient with self and being patient with others, having mercy towards self and others, um, patience, joy, mildness, kindness. And we need to practice these attributes every day. And they all kind of work together. And then we can say we're being more loving to ourselves and more loving to other humans or animals or other beings. So that is very well established in ET culture. And I don't think it's spoken enough about um, amongst experiencers. There seems to be a large emphasis on the fear component, but I think that the love harmonic, which most ET beings resonate with, is actually a much stronger and truer snapshot of what ETs are all about. So the next section is maintaining the love harmonic. Since the late 1950s, we on Earth have been inundated with postmodern thought, which tears down obsolete and destructive ways of thinking. This gave rise to a very critical analysis of society called deconstructionism, and we see this in ridiculous extremes here on Earth today. Although it had its place, the flaw with this type of analysis is that it is anti-productive to positive creativity and growth. One can spend so much time going down one rabbit hole of analysis after another that the joy of existence as creative beings is forgotten and lost, and this leads to much unhappiness. All of the good and positive aspects are destroyed, along with the bad and negative perspectives, and this is just another form of flawed revisionist history. Nothing is truly learned. It promotes cancel culture and without exposing the valuable lessons to be learned, and offers no healthy alternatives as it becomes a dogmatic, godless, modern religion. And that's why you can really see in our society, people that are really into this deconstructionism and tearing down the way things were done in the past. They're not happy. They're very unhappy people, and they offer no solutions and no positive ways that we can create. And that is a huge flaw, and that has led to many of the problems we're seeing in society on Earth today. In contrast, extraterrestrial beings focus on what is creative, healthy, and inspiring. They take responsibility for themselves and the collective because concepts of social acceptance, fear-based thinking, or competition do not exist. Desire, peace, and harmony are components of everyday life off-world. And as I mentioned above, an important part of ET culture is the self-love, which includes spiritual, social, economic, and personal self-care. Spiritual self-care includes recognizing feelings of gratitude and appreciation, and they are always giving and accepting unconditional love to and from each other. The socio environment aboard the big ship is so emotionally peaceful and physically grounding that it is a welcome pleasure to find myself there. People often ask me, "Weren't you afraid? Weren't you afraid?" And I'm going, "Nope, not at all. It's a beautiful, beautiful culture. In fact, it's very difficult to come back and face Earth life." As mentioned in an earlier chapter, the big ship itself is alive and it emits frequencies which are conducive to health and positive mood. The foods that we eat are fresh, provide an abundance of life force energy, and are grown in every department, which provides a very grounding environment, similar to what we would experience when we are out in nature here on Earth. Further, every morning we attend the communal baths, which provide a personal and collective grounding environment. This routine also gives us the chance to participate in group meditation, bonding, and grooming. And I noticed that some beings are more into grooming than others. Just want to say hi to Rudy. Hi, Rudy. Welcome to the show. Nice to see you, and glad that you could join us. Humans are on the extreme end of the grooming races, but not all off-world beings are genetically predisposed to it. Those of us who have grooming genetics require daily touch and physical affection in order to revitalize our energy pathways and strengthen our energetic pulse. For us, grooming, touch, and physical affection contribute to our feeling physically, mentally, and spiritually well. As mentioned before, the baths help us to form and strengthen our familial bonds, and the fluid provides healing, grounding nutrient for our bodies. After participating in the bathing sessions, our skin feels like it is glowing, and we are very relaxed and comfortable with each other. The nudity seems to naturally enhance bonding, as we do not judge the external form of any body type, because we all know that whether beings are fully corporeal or occupy a cloned body, the actual physical form we take is irrelevant. Unlike us here on Earth, with our complicated social and psychological imperfections, when it comes to sex or nudity on the big ship, there is a total absence of guilt, shame, self-consciousness, awkwardness, lust, competitiveness, power differentials, or perversions. In addition, as part of self-love and self-care, all beings participate in some form of stretching to unblock their energy centers and stimulate circulation while preparing their bodies for the day. They use various practices that look like yoga or qigong, which mimic the natural flow of air and water as found on many different worlds. ETs are aware of naturally occurring chakras, meridians, and other energy centers found within their bodies, but they do not find the need to religiously service them the way we do here on Earth because they are so fit and healthy. Everyone there has a vibrant heart toroidal field, and I noticed that although I could sense their energies, different beings affect me in their own way. While on the big ship, I felt extra happy around some beings and more peaceful around others. And all of our energies combine with the energy of the big ship, which integrate to form the temperament of the social atmosphere. While I was there, I learned that love is a universal energy pattern used to produce positive feelings, healing, and creativity. Love is actually the harmonic frequency of universal consciousness, which can be expressed as sound, color, light, plasma, and orgasmic feelings. Aboard the big ship, sex is the erotic manifestation of love, which is a great basis for procreation. So, yeah, you can see, I know when you tuned into the show, you were expecting something a little bit more erotic, and what you got is some big dose of spirituality, but that's how it is aboard the big ship. It's a very spiritual environment. Like I mentioned earlier in the book, these beings are at our next stage of development. And this is where we're heading if we change our ways and start to focus our priorities on creating harmony and love and peace here on Earth. So I'm just going to take a minute to play a quick 2-minute promotion for my books. And then when we come back, we're going to zero in on reproduction. So I know you don't want to miss this. So stay tuned and we'll be right back. Learn the stunning details about ET diversity and culture, along with their advanced ways of living and expressing spirituality, which is in no way like anything imagined here on Earth. Transdimensional, Meet the New Neighbors, introduces you to many different ET beings, the healing pods, the interior of the big ship, my orientation process, cultural events, and off-world mating practices. In my contact experience, I learned a great deal about the big ship, intergalactic and transdimensional travel, intergalactic planetary research, and the various options for resettlement. Once I published my first book, I felt the need to create a second book called Transdimensional 2, Meet the Greys picture book. I worked with AI to develop many images of beings that we have come to know of as the Greys. These beings come from many places, realms, dimensions, and timelines, and although they are of the same species as other humanoids, they are from many different family lines and races. What qualifies them as Greys is that their skin does not contain the pigment necessary to reflect light in our visible range of the color spectrum, so to us, they all appear to be various shades of gray. Beyond this physical attribute, there is much diversity in their origins, cultures, purposes, and physiological details. My goal is to get you used to the looks of beings which are different than humans in order to reduce your fear and increase your familiarity so you will remain more rational and grounded once the ET presence escalates beyond debate. Enjoy these images and notice the things we have in common so you will see that although they are different from us in appearance, we are essentially many family lines within one species. Paperback and Kindle versions of both books are now available on Amazon worldwide. Search the Amazon and Kindle bookstores and pick up your copies today. And one other thing is if you go and visit my website and you click on the shop or you click on the inspired images tab, and again, the link is below in the description, you can download your own full color, full size PDFs. So the images within the book are actually in grayscale because it would be very expensive to create the books in color. And so if you go to my website, you can download the PDFs and collect your own PDFs, whether it's of the Gray's children, the hybrids, the females, the males, the stereotypical looking Grays, or the human looking Grays. I also have the images from the book that I'm covering today, Transdimensional Meet the New Neighbors. The images in this book are also in grayscale, but on my website, you can download the full color, full size PDFs for your own use. And I even have one pack of bonus material, which are images of things talked about in the book, but aren't actually in the book. So the only way you can get them is to download the PDF from my website, www.karenholtonhealthcoach.com. That's KarenHolton, healthcoach.com. Take a look at my shop too. Help to support my work. Buy yourself a beautiful orgone generator or crystal. Take a look at some of the services and supports that I offer. And I think you'll find it really quite interesting. I've put quite a lot of work into my website. So getting back to the book, we're now going to talk about page 126, reproduction. Just going to check the chat. Oh, Tennessee, Kentucky, Bigfoot. Hi, nice to see you. Welcome to the show. So we're going to talk about ET reproduction now. Reproduction always includes intense love, and it usually requires physical intimacy, although the relationship between parents does not look like our concept of marriage. Life partners do occur frequently among the higher beings, and these relationships are universally tied to the concept of family, but there is no contract or set way of doing this. Some ETs, like the twins, which are short beings with beards that I spoke about several times earlier in the book, they cannot survive without each other. They form a life bond with their partners from childhood that lasts until their death. In fact, if one of them passes away, the other one will too. That's how close they are, and they stay that way for their whole lives. In addition, ETs do not confine themselves to categories of gender or sexuality. They have a more integrated approach as they know that energetically both genders exist within everyone, and all humanoids are one species with gender neutrality at conception. At a certain stage of prenatal development, their XX or XY genetics signal to the mother, who in response generates specific hormones to be made available or withheld in utero. Then the external or internal genitalia are determined and expressed. Eventually, the genitalia will be used for erotic behaviors and later, upon the being's physical maturity, for reproduction. However, this being said, many off-world beings have either male or female genitalia hidden within their bodies until they are stimulated to participate in the act of coitus, and then their sex organs simply pop out for ease of use. Genitalia are necessary for the sexual act and for reproduction, but have little bearing on the personality, character, thinking, or way of being of the individual. ET does not share our socialization, so they do not know of what we consider to be typically male or female behavior or ability, or about transgender or transsexual labels. They are part of a gender continuum and have both male and female qualities of personality, and they have enormous freedom to express as the unique individuals that they are and not as gender stereotypes. In addition, ET would not consider themselves to be gay, lesbian, or bisexual because they are completely free to express erotic love with another being or beings, regardless of genitalia or socialization. You could say that ETs are closer to being pansexual and pangender. They are fully aware that they carry the energy of the divine feminine and the divine masculine within, and this adds to the balance of creation. Further, sex for reproduction is more technical than sex for orgasm and requires some preparation time. There are many beings who have ritual, some are quite complex, that is done as sort of a mating dance to provide the conditions necessary for the erotic readiness for conception. Examples that I witnessed included a dance done in a very specific manner so that the being who will carry the child will be able to conceive. Other rituals are very much like a tea or shamanic ceremony with herbs and things that encourage fertility and conception. So, yeah, so basically, they don't have our socialization. We've been socialized to believe women act this way, men act that way, and we tend to follow the patterns, but that's not actually inborn. That's a socially constructed way of being. And ET doesn't have our socialization, so they don't have to follow our rules. In fact, they would not even consider the way we do things here on Earth. But it is also interesting that those who are born with the genetics to carry a child, they're the ones that carry the child. And those that are born with the genetics to implant or start life within what we call the females, they are the ones that provide basically the father role. But neither is considered superior or over the other. Both are necessary for creation. And that's just how it's seen on the big ship. So I want to tell you a little bit about an experience I had. I call it a very erotic dance. And this was a mating ritual that I had the privilege of participating in. It was beautiful. And I thought you might be interested in hearing about it. So I'm going to read that on page 127. I remember the first time I was invited to witness an erotic mating ritual. We gathered in a large room and sat comfortably on the soft, semi-yielding floor while we communed with each other. When the mating couple entered the room, we stopped communicating with each other and focused our attention upon them. Telepathic beings usually shield their thoughts and feelings when of a more intimate nature, as some things are traditionally kept private. But this couple freely shared their intense love and desire for each other, and we could feel their joyful longing for their soon to be conceived child. The hair of the female was piled high up on top of her head, and the male wore a simple cap, and his hair was tied back into a ponytail. She wore a white ruffled full-length dress, and he wore what resembled a colorful, loose-fitting tracksuit. Their gaze was fully locked into each other's, and they began to move barefooted around each other, slowly at first, as they reached out and gently stroked each other's arms, faces, and hair. Before long, they loosened each other's hair, and it swirled and cascaded around them. Once their erotic dance picked up the pace, they slowly removed each other's clothing and began to stroke each other's backs, stomachs, chests, and thighs, and their telepathic transmissions became very intense. We were not merely spectators, but were feeling the feelings they shared freely, and we soon began to feel the heat. On and on they danced, and soon the ritual became a frenzied blur of movement and emotion until she was ready to conceive. And then he suddenly scooped her up and swiftly carried her off to a private place to implant her with his seed. Those of us left in the room were literally panting, and some were fanning themselves to try to cool down a bit. Most didn't wait around to socialize as they had been so affected by the passion and heat of the erotic dance that they needed a sexual release sooner rather than later. Like the others, I was wildly affected and scurried back to my quarters for some much needed privacy. In the upcoming days, the couple came to visit each of us with the happy news of their expected wee baby, and they warmly thanked us for participating in their successful event. Energetically, we were a team effort, and I was glad to have shared in their mating ritual. Yeah, it was really quite something. So, I mean, indirectly we didn't or directly we didn't have any real effect, except we were there kind of as resonators. So we picked up on their emotions, their feelings, their intentions, and amplified it as a group. And then it went back to the couple and helped her to get to the stage where she would be ready to conceive. And I've never heard of anything like that on earth. It was quite amazing. And it was successful, and they were able to conceive and eventually bear a child from it. So I thought that was quite a privilege and quite an eye-opening experience. I'm just gonna check. Tennessee, Kentucky Bigfoot says, "This is very interesting." Yeah, it is very interesting. And more than that, what I think is that we can learn from these beings, and we can put into practice some of their ways of doing and being here on Earth. And it might actually make our lives more enjoyable, more rewarding, more successful. So my book isn't just, oh, hey, read my book and hear about my visit to the big ship. It's the things I learned. That's what's really important. So I highly recommend that you suss out the pearls and the jewels within this book and apply what interests you and discard the rest. So I've spoken many times within the book about the couple that I call the twins. They're not actually twins. They are mated lifetime partners. One's a male, one's a female. They have red spiky hair. They're very short, barely 5 feet tall. They both have beards, and surprisingly, the female has a larger beard than the male. At first, I would get them mixed up because of that. Well, I want to tell you a little bit about what happened with them that has to do with reproduction. So this section's called The Twins Bear Good News. One morning, as I sat in the warm fluids of the morning bath, the twins approached me wearing bigger smiles than usual. The female took my hand and gently laid it on her tummy, and I instantly felt the presence of their growing baby within her. I was so happy for them that I burst into tears and I hugged them both tightly. Although they did not have a public mating ritual, they shared their joy with me over the next 10 months. And I was present for the birth, which was surprisingly simple process without any complications. Their little girl was adorable, and soon after her birth, another short, red-headed bearded and heavily pregnant couple immigrated to the big ship, and in the following days they joined our social circle. It is important for those beings to introduce their child to its prospective mate by the time it becomes a toddler. Talk about early arranged marriage. Although they would not become mates until they reach sexual maturity, the close bond would need to be established very early on in childhood to ensure their mental and emotional bond and stability. This is a healthy process for these beings and leads to a lifelong commitment. So, here on Earth, we do have arranged marriages. It's very common. Probably half the Earth's population participate in arranged marriages. And generally, it's done because the parents want to pick out somebody who is going to really be of benefit to the union down the road, like, for instance, financial stability, emotional stability, gentle temperament, being, kind based on their parents. And but on this off-world situation, what I call the twins, which are not really twins, that's why it's in quotation marks, they introduce their prospective mates to each other in toddlerhood. So, by the time they're like 1.5, 2 years old, and they start playing together every day, and they form this really, really tight, intense emotional bond to each other, almost as if they were born as physical and biological twins. And then when they're older and they reach sexual maturity, then they become mates with each other. But it's just how it's done amongst that group of beings. So as you can see, aboard the big ship, there's many different races of ETs, which was fantastic because I got a real good overview of what things are like on other in other realities. So yeah, so Tennessee Bigfoot says, I'm not sure if that's because of this post or whether it's because of what I said, but Maya says it's real nice weather there in Tennessee, Kentucky Bigfoot. He says, cool. Oh, here we got something about the Bigfoots. Tennessee, Kentucky Bigfoot says the Foots practice something like that. They intentionally breed out the undesirable traits. It's like up to 7 years. They are very conscious of the children and mating. Wonderful. I didn't know that. I wonder, do you know Tennessee, Kentucky Bigfoot, if ETs could be classed as interdimensionals or ETs, or are they indigenous to Earth? I've always wondered that. So now I'm going to read a little bit about seven generations, he says. So now I want to read a little bit about family planning, which I thought was interesting. All off-world births are recorded, and everyone has access to their genealogy and genetic details. Every being is excited about reproduction, and births are documented, but they're not regulated. Couples are routinely scanned by the genetic department for emotional and physical compatibility before proceeding, and there are rare cases where reproduction between diverse races is not ideal, but most interracial relationships and families do very well. Reproduction includes sex, love, orgasm, and emotional bonding, and there's always a tremendous commitment made to the offspring. Before couples plan their pregnancy, they have already bonded, spent considerable time together, and are fully committed to spending their lives in a monogamous union until their youngest child is fully grown and mature enough to proceed with their own lives apart from their parents. Monogamy is not forced upon anyone, but it's chosen freely to supply the maximum focused attention and stability for the offspring. It is well recognized that bringing souls into corporeal form is a serious business and requires much forethought and preparation. Although there are no hard and fast rules, social or religious, that the couples are coerced to follow, monogamy is freely chosen to ensure the success of the family and future generations to come. Tennessee, Kentucky Bigfoot. Bigfoots are more indigenous to Earth than humans are. Interesting. So they've been here and been more well established than even humans. Very interesting. Thank you for sharing that with us. So you can see that family planning, we might think of this as being kind of old-fashioned, but they've known for generations, thousands of generations, what works and what doesn't work. And what works is when all seriousness, new generations are brought forth in stable family environments where the parents focus their attention on raising healthy offspring, because that's what the future generations are going to be made up of. And that's what works. And so they make the sacrifice of becoming monogamous while they have children. And then when the children grow up and leave home, then the couples are free to either separate or stay together, form other sexual partners, depending, because they have the freedom again. And remember, these beings live for well past 500 years. And so they're generally at their peak sexually for the first 200 years. And so, having children or a family that grows up, it might take 30 or 40 years. They're a little bit slower than us. And then they've still got hundreds of years to do what they want. So, it is a little sacrifice, but one well worth for the future generations, for the stability, not just aboard the big ship, but for the worlds that different beings go and populate. So now I have a word about sex. After their children have reached maturity, couples will choose to stay together or separate to pursue personal life goals. And either way, at this point, they usually resume some sexual encounters with others. As mentioned earlier, single beings who are fully mature will pursue sexual relations with a few others or even many others over time until they are ready to form a family arrangement. But some will never have the desire to procreate and will always remain single. Regardless of their life choices and sexual preferences, there is always an emotional and spiritual component to sex aboard the big ship, and it can never be strictly about physical orgasm. Climax, or sex, can stand on its own or be a part of reproduction, but aboard the big ship, sex is always an expression of love. Let's see. Oh yeah, okay, I've got to read one more little section and then that's it. Now, again, please feel free to buy the book if you want to read the missing portions. And I have missing portions that I haven't read throughout the book that I think you would find extremely interesting. So I'll just finish off with the last couple paragraphs here. Physical orgasm creates a great deal of sexual energy. When used for reproduction, this energy goes toward the conception and creative process to generate a baby being. Here on Earth, sexual energy is most often greedily and unwittingly used for dark magic, but things are very different in off-world environments, and they do not use or even have a concept for pornography. Aboard the big ship, the physical and intimate union of bodies serves to energize and enhance the health of beings, as well as to encourage emotional bonding and increase spiritual joy. Non-physical orgasm is also a commonly utilized option and is either telepathically delivered mind to mind, or it can be energetically produced and transmitted heart to heart. Psychic sex only creates positive healing energy between beings, which benefits the social and spiritual atmosphere on the big ship. It creates an intense sensation of euphoria and spiritual bliss, which explains why I saw no evidence of the use of synthetic drugs or medicinal plants to produce these feelings. Aboard the big ship, I very much enjoyed both kinds of psychic sexual relations, and when it was delivered telepathically, mind to mind, we did not need to be in close proximity or share body contact at all. The effect was like having a very vivid sexual fantasy, which we both contributed to, and it intensified to the point of physical orgasm and release. But when I participated in the heart-to-heart method, we were in close proximity as it requires us to overlap and join our heart toroidal fields, but we did not physically touch each other. This experience was purely sensual and left no room for thinking about anything at all, although we did maintain constant eye contact. The passionate sensations felt like exploding waves of intense bliss from deep within my physical body and resulted in several fierce and powerful orgasms in a row. My friends could tell when I recently enjoyed psychic sex because I could not stop smiling for days at a time. Okay, so I think we'll end it up there. There are a couple other sections that I'm going to leave as surprises for you when you purchase the book. Let's see. Tennessee, Kentucky Bigfoot said, we had a reading that Mary had a conception of knowing, not pleasure. Sounds familiar to what you are saying. Oh, maybe that is entirely possible. I'm not totally familiar with what they call Mariolatry or the stories of the Virgin Mary, but I mean, what's done off world could have been done in the past here on Earth or will be done in the future. It's kind of hard to say. So that's about it for today. I want to thank everybody for joining me, and a reminder for those of you who joined us a little bit later in the show today, I will be away for about 3 weeks, going to visit and stay with my my daughter and her husband and my grandchildren, which I'm super looking forward to. But I've got premieres scheduled so that you don't have to miss out on any content. And so I've got some really interesting interviews that I have done with Brian Brew, Chris Matthew of Forbidden Knowledge News, Nina the Mystic, and others, so that you will still have content at the usually scheduled times, and you can participate in the live chat. So even though I may not be there, you can still communicate with each other and share a conversation about the content and keep up the community connection. You're welcome, Maya. Thank you for joining us. So thank you, everybody, for joining me today. It's been a pleasure, as always. I wish you a wonderful week. Check me out on Wednesday for the Quantum Guide Show, and then which is a premiere. And then I will see you all in a couple of weeks, and we'll finish up the book, and then we'll get on to some exciting interviews with other experiencers, and that is that, as they say. So thank you, everybody, for joining me today. And again, wish you the best, and sending out many blessings to those on the audio podcasts, the replays, everybody. Take care, everybody. Thank you for joining me for the Aliens and Angels podcast. Read about my true life ET contact in my book called Transdimensional Meet the New Neighbors, which is now available on Amazon worldwide. Subscribe to my YouTube, Rumble, and X channels at Karen Holton TV. The like button and leave me a comment, and please do share this podcast with your friends. Check out my website at www.KarenHoltonHealthCoach.com to to see my free resources and amazing products and services. All of the links will be in the description below. As part of the Forbidden Knowledge Network, you'll also find the Quantum Guide Show with Karen Holton on all audio platforms. Until next time, keep up the good work.